Joe? Good, good. All right, welcome everybody. I'm Mike Lindberry. I am the Public Information Officer for California Incident Management Team 3 under the command of Mark Von Tillow. We've called the press conference today. We are going to do a operational update on what's happening with the Whittier Fire, and then we'll move on and we'll have comments from Randy Moore, the Regional Forester for the Region 5, which is the state of California, United States Forest Service, and we'll have comments from Cal Fire Director Ken Pimlott. I'd like to recognize some people who are here and thank them. Over on my left, we have, besides the speakers that will be coming up, I'd like to welcome Bob Baird. He's the Regional Director of Fire and Aviation for the U.S. Forest Service. Gene Wade Evans, the Deputy Director of Fire and Aviation for the U.S. Forest Service. Wendy Mata, is Wendy still here? Wendy is the District Representative for Congressman Salud Carbajal. And we also have Matt Pontes. Where's Matt? Matt's right back here. Matt is the Assistant Santa Barbara County CEO, Interim Director of the Santa Barbara County Office of Emergency Management as well. Today, we have the representatives, what we call the agency administrators of the unified agencies here. So we have Eric Peterson, Chief of the Santa Barbara County Fire Department. We have Merv George, the Forest Supervisor for the Los Padres National Forest. We have Commander Kelly Moore from the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office. And we have Cal Fire San Luis Unit Chief Scott Jobber. And there's Scott out here. So thank you for being here. We apologize for the delay. We're getting in a pretty good place with this fire, so I'd like to bring Chief Mark Von Tillow up to give you an operational update. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Like Mike said, my name is Mark Von Tillow. I'm the Incident Commander for California Team 3 in charge of the Whittier incident. I'm going to break this into a couple of things. I'm going to turn to the map here and sort of walk you around the fire, where we're at and where we plan on going with it, and an update on acres and containment. And then I'll come back here and I'll give you some quick facts and figures about some of the things that you may have heard or not to try to clarify any rumors. So turn around and point to the map here, and I'll try to keep the microphone so you can hear it. Up on top in Branch 1, Division A along Lake Cachuma there, you can see the black line. We feel good about that. We're calling that contained. It's in a mop-up phase and fire line suppression phase. As I come around to the side over here in Division Bravo, you can see the red line. That's still not contained. We have crews working in there right now building direct line. By the end of shift today, this should probably turn black, which is a very critical piece for us to keep the fire spreading to the east any further. Working down through here at Branch 2, we've built dozer line down a ridge. It's stopped really in the top of the Gap fire from 2008. And as we come across the front country here of Goleta, from Friday night, you saw the fire come down the hill pretty hard. And the day after, we had the Marine layer come in and sort of stop it where it's at. We have crews working up in Gato Canyon, Dos Pueblos Canyon, and Tecolote Canyon right now looking for access points to go direct there. As you come around to the west side of the fire over here in Division Whiskey, the black line again where it ran into the Sherpa fire. It's all contained on that. No more further southwest progression there or west progression below the West Camino Cielo. Come around to the north side of the fire, north side of Santa Ynez Range, Division Yankee and Zulu. We have crews in there trying to go direct today. We put retardant on the ground. That's really our big focus today is on this side over here to try to button that up. A lot of horsepower in this with aircraft and crews. That's really the quick overview of where we're at today with the resources and what they're doing on the fire and what the strategy is. Still full suppression strategy. Couple of quick notes, 18,311 acres, 49% containment. That will probably go up tonight, and tonight's 209. 2,271 personnel, and that includes all of the support personnel that you see in camp here that is required to support all the firefighters on the ground. It's just not them. It takes quite a support system. One thing I want to clarify, there was a lot of rumors about structures destroyed, damaged, and outbuildings. I'll give you the facts. The facts are 16 residences, primary residences, were destroyed. One residence was damaged. 30 outbuildings were destroyed. And when I say outbuildings, anything from a shed to a garage to anything but a primary residence. And also 6 outbuildings destroyed. Evacuations that are in place. Most of you probably know this morning at 10 a.m. I did lift the evacuation warning for Paradise Road, and I also cleared the evacuation order for West Camino Cielo, Kinnavan Road, Stagecoach Road, and Cold Spring Tavern. Injuries to date, not a lot. Probably the biggest injury that we have is Poison Oak. A few hundred cases of that have been treated. Most of those have returned to the line. And really the biggest injury that we have was a heat illness. Those are starting to drop off as we got through the heat wave. I think after the briefing, I'll be around for any specific questions regarding the fire-specific operations. But right now, I'd like to introduce the Regional Forester from Region 5, Randy Moore.
Thank you, Mark. So good afternoon. So we, on the flight down here this morning, we had an opportunity to fly over the fire and just take a look to see how things were progressing. And I would just say right off the bat, a big thank you for Mark and his team and how successful they've been at suppressing that fire and keeping it just to the extent that it is. When I look at the entire state of California, we've had about 43,000 acres that have burned from wildfires, and that includes about 360 or so wildfires. 18 of that 43 is right here on this fire, the Whittier Fire, and about 10,000 acres on the Schaefer Fire down on the Sequoia National Forest. The rest of those fires, we've been very successful with initial attack in suppressing those fires. But the thing that I think we have to recognize is that these have been some extremely environmental conditions that our firefighters are working in. You have 100+ degrees in many of these areas. And yet we have crews out there being successful in the work that they do. And so a lot of kudos to our firefighters who are actually there on the ground working in these conditions and being successful. I'd also like to say thank you to the leadership of that fire. But more importantly, I want to say thank you to the partnership and the cooperation that we've had with the entire community. So whether you're looking at federal fire, whether you're looking at state resources, local resources, volunteers or cooperators, the relationships have been absolutely outstanding because as we all know, fires know no boundaries. And the way that we suppress these fires, we shouldn't have any boundaries either. And I've seen that as a great example here on the Whittier Fire. So kudos to all of our partners, cooperators, both at federal, state, and local level. And just a great job. The other thing is I'd like to recognize is that when that fire had initially started, there was a camp that was threatened. And to our law enforcement officer who was there to keep the young people quiet and not panicking in this kind of a situation, it was really heroic conditions in the situation that he put himself in and to manage that, what could have been a disastrous outcome. I looked at the retardant drops all around the fire. They've been spot on. And so the fact that this fire has been managed to the degree that the fire retardants have been just spot on says a lot about the quality of the folks that's working this fire. So I want to say thank you all for everyone that's involved in this, and particularly our cooperators, both at the federal, state, local, and our cooperators. And now at this time, I'd like to introduce one of our partners and also a very good friend, Chief Ken Pimlott from Cal Fire.
Thank you, Randy. Echo Randy's comments. Just in the last 10 years, California has experienced some of the most devastating fires in its history. The challenge we have with wildland fire in California is only going to continue to grow. But I can tell you the one thing that is unchanging is the partnerships and the unified effort by which California as a whole attacks the wildland fires in this state. And that's the partnership between our federal partners, the Forest Service, and the other federal partners, Cal Fire, and all of our local government partners. Almost 1,000 fire agencies in California, our law enforcement partners, and the many others that work. This fire was a textbook example of how that partnership works. A lot of fire history here in this part of California. Go back to 1990 and the Paint Fire, 2008, the Gap Fire, and many others. There is significant potential for these fires to become very complex and to be very damaging to communities. Right down here, Goleta, Santa Barbara, and many other areas. And so we don't have the luxury to worry about boundaries. We don't have the luxury to deal with any kind of squabbling. It doesn't happen. Statewide, all the partnerships, and you'll hear stories about this fire for many weeks to come. It's because of the fact that all of the agencies know each other very, very well. They're able to engage literally as they're helping rescue and shelter in place members at these camps that were overrun by fire. It's because they all knew each other from the very beginning and knew what to expect. We look at that from the state level as well. There was never any question that the state was going to bring to bear whatever resources it needed that were requested by our local government and our federal partners to mitigate the risk here. This is going on statewide. We're just ramping up to now the peak of fire season. We have a number of other major fires going on in the state right now. Literally, as we speak, we're moving resources, redeploying to meet the new threat. Literally, within the last week or a week ago, we had what we think is almost a record number of fires in 1 week. Over 630 fires started in a 1 week period. Just last week, we had over 330. We're in this fire season for the long haul, and you have the full support of all of the agencies standing here together to make that happen. Again, this fire was no different, and very proud of everything that everybody did here and continues to do to serve the public. And of course, goes without saying, we need the public to do your part too. Again, Ready for Wildfire, I talk about it all the time, readyforwildfire.org, go to that website. So with that, I'm going to pull a little bit of a change up. I know it wasn't on the program Mike mentioned, but I'd like to invite the Santa Barbara County Fire Chief, Eric Peterson, to step forward. He's one of the 3 unified partners. This is Santa Barbara County. Eric has a couple of comments that he would like to make before we turn it back over to Mike.
Well, thank you, Chief Pimlott. This has been said a lot, but I need to say it again. This fire has just been a great example of interagency cooperation and coordination. If you look at that command post, if you took a walk through that command post, or you look at this group over here, you see a lot of different colored uniforms. And it is such a pleasure to work in a unified system where no one cares what color uniform they're wearing. Everybody working in this system have one goal in mind, and that is to get this fire out, get everybody back into their homes, not get anybody hurt, and get all our firefighters home safely. So really just a nice example of a lot of people, many of whom who've known each other for an awfully long time, many of whom who've grown up in those hills up there, working together with a common goal in mind and making something really good happen, and that is putting this fire out. As the Santa Barbara County Fire Chief, I want to thank Cal Fire, the United States Forest Service, and Cal OEM for the quick and unified response to the Alamo and Whittier fires. The fact that we have Chief Pimlott and Chief Moore here personally, Chief Baird over here personally here in Santa Barbara, I think says an awful lot about the commitment these agencies show towards protecting Santa Barbara County. I also want to say we have a huge amount of resources here from Cal OEM, from our California Mutual Aid System, which is truly the best in the entire world. So we have a really nice story here. We've talked a lot about the rescue that happened up there. This environment that exists here in Santa Barbara County creates a system where those kinds of things can happen seamlessly, and it's really been a privilege to be a part of it. So I'm going to give it back to our PIO, Lynn Berry. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. We're going to ask our unified incident commanders, Chief Tillow, Chief Enos, Chief Cleveland, come on up. And then our sheriff's incident commander, is he still here? Okay. Kelly here. There he is. So we're going to go into Q&A now, and I'll let Chief Tillow kind of facilitate all of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions specifically that we could address? Ma'am. Right, we did place a sprinkler system in there a couple of days ago. Santa Barbara City Strike Team was able to put that in for us. We did open up the road today. I'm not sure about the business. That's up to them to decide when they want to open, but the road is open, and I don't feel that the Cold Spring Tavern is under threat anymore.
Can you talk about the use of the old fire lines for GAP, Sherpa, and how you're increasing along those for further protection?
Yeah, sure. Sort of a blessing in disguise having the fire history here. Between the GAP and the Sherpa, the fuel beds are very young. The GAP was in 2008, so it's a 9-year-old fuel bed. Sherpa, 1-year-old fuel bed, does not react to fire the same way that the Whittier Fire has. So instead of reinventing the wheel on those previous fires, we go back and use the maps that we have in history and look at that and try to reopen those lines from a different perspective this time, but are very useful to us. Sir?
Any official target date on full containment?
No containment date yet.
Do you mind just going over some of the big challenges for today, the areas that are not fully contained?
So the big challenges today, I think we're getting into that steep and rocky terrain, very difficult for firefighters, very difficult to support. Anybody that can, there's probably a reason there's no trails on the front country of this piece of fire. It's very rocky, very steep, very hard to access, but it doesn't mean that we can't get there. It's just going to take a little bit longer time. The heat on the other side is a big deal for us. Everybody's getting hydrated, and we're preparing everybody. They've been here a week now. They're sort of getting acclimated to it. But those are some of the big challenges, the terrain itself. Yes?
What are your concerns with the northeastern end? You said that was going to be a big focus today with air support.
So the northeastern end is the biggest piece of line that we have open. You can see it's the large besides the front country, but it has, in the heat compared to the fog that sits down here on the Santa Barbara side. It's not to say that it's any less or the other, but I do have to have a priority. You can't have two priorities, right? And so that's probably the piece that we're focusing on today. We do have a lot of resources on the front country here, though. A lot of people are still out looking at the front, but that's going to be the piece that we need to button up, probably within the next day or two, I'm hoping.
Would you mind just reiterating, we understand that a lot of these areas hadn't burned in 50 to 60 years, but there are also areas that have no fire history at all. Can you point those out?
So I can't point it out on this map. We don't have all the fire history, but we do have a fire history map that I can show you later. There are just pockets in there that the Refugio fire didn't hit in 55, the Sherpa didn't hit, the Gap didn't hit, the Gaviota didn't hit, all of those fires. But there's certain pockets in there that we just don't have any fire history. And of course, with the 5 years of drought stressed prior to this year's rain, those fuel beds were ready to go if fire was introduced. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming, everybody. I'd like to thank Regional Forester Randy Green, Randy Moore, I'm sorry. Chief Pimlott, Chief von Tillow for presenting today. I believe many of you will be available for interviews afterward, but I also believe many of you will have to catch a plane. So we understand if you have to go. Thanks a lot, and we'll try to get your needs taken care of for the rest of the day. Thank you.
We're clear. We are clear. Okay.
All right.
Do you want us just to get one quick bite?
Yeah, but if you
Well, we
bring
can
them
just
here,
do-
I'm all tied up.
Yeah, we can take it off the camera.
Well, we can, if you have somebody, I can just unplug and do it.
We'll get Fontello real fast.